shattered, cornered, no one coming. "Please, I'm asking you." He stood above her, hand resting near his holster, and the horses were already thundering across the flats. The Kansas sun pressed down without mercy, scorching the prairie gold and brittle. Heat shimmered off the earth like an open oven door. Clara Whitmore lay crumpled in the dust, one knee split open, blood darkening the cloth around her leg. Every breath a battle she was barely winning. She pushed against the ground with both hands. Her leg refused the order. Pain arrived like a hammer strike, sudden and total, pulling the air right out of her lungs. Voices floated in on the wind, low, measured, and drawing nearer. Not one rider. Far too many for any fair accounting. Elijah Boone did not crouch beside her. He did not offer a word. He simply stood there, watching her with the look of a man measuring something that had no clean answer. He had already placed one woman in the ground, and nothing had felt balanced since that day. He had no appetite for doing it again. Clara forced her eyes to find his face and hold it. "You don't have to fight anyone," she said, her voice worn to the bone but reaching for something steady. "Just get me on a horse. I can ride." Elijah turned his head slow, gaze sweeping the horizon the way a man does when he has spent decades reading open country for a living. 3 riders, maybe 4, fanned wide, tightening. He looked back down at her. "You belong to Whitmore?" he asked. Clara answered with a quick nod, fingers pressing into the dry earth beneath her. "They murdered my father," she said. "What I'm carrying is what they're after." Her hand pressed instinctively against her side, against something beneath her blouse. Papers. Elijah caught it. He filed it away without a word. Clara swallowed, her voice fracturing at the edges. "If they reach me first, it's—" She let the sentence die. She didn't need to complete it. Elijah had known men who rode like that under summer skies. Men who left nothing behind that could speak against them. For one suspended moment, he stood completely still. Did not help. Did not leave. Just existed between the two choices, and in that moment it looked very much like he might walk away and let the dust have her. Then he moved. Quick. No ceremony. He reached under her arms and hauled her upright, her cry of pain ignored, pulling her toward his horse with the efficiency of a man who understood that seconds were the only currency left. He lifted her hard into the saddle. Clara seized the leather, her vision swimming, her legs screaming from hip to heel. Elijah swung up behind her in a single clean motion. The hoofbeats crested the rise at their backs. Close enough now to feel in the chest. He drove his heels in and the horse lunged forward, not toward Dodge City. Away from it. Out across the open expanse that stretched toward Fort Dodge like a road no one had bothered to build. Clara held on, half conscious, one hand pressed flat against her ribs where the folded documents were hidden. Elijah had noticed. He understood they meant something, and he understood that the men chasing them would shed blood to reclaim them. The question that burned hotter than the sky overhead was a simple one. Was Elijah Boone carrying her to safety, or to somewhere that no one would ever think to look? The horse ran flat out across the cracked earth, hooves beating a hard rhythm, a wall of dust rising behind them like the land itself was covering their trail. Clara gripped the saddle horn with everything she had, her wounded leg alive with fire at every stride. Elijah didn't ease up, not while the distance between them and those riders still mattered. He guided the animal through a shallow depression, then up along a low spine of land where the wind had room to move. Only then did he steal a glance behind them. The riders were smaller now. Still there. Still coming. He faced forward again. "Hold on," he said, steady as a fence post, like they were making a leisurely trip into town. Clara exhaled something that wasn't quite a laugh. "Doing my best," she said. He let the horse slow just a fraction. "Enough to think. Enough to talk. You said they killed your father," he said. "Are you certain of that?" Clara had been holding that particular weight since the fall, since the chase, since before any of this had a name. Now it came loose. The official word was robbery, she said. They claimed he put up a fight. She shook her head slightly. "My father never traveled that road carrying real money. Not alone. Not like that." The horse kept its rhythm, quieter now. "He had land," she continued. Small claim. But it held water, even in the dead of July. Elijah's eyes tightened at the corners. Water. Out here, that one word carried the weight of everything. Silas Crow came to the property twice, Clara went on. Made his offer both times. My father turned him away both times. 1 week later, my father was in the ground. Elijah said nothing immediately, but he had watched that same story play out before, on different land, under different names. I found papers hidden in the barn, Clara said, stuffed inside an old feed box. A land transfer. My property signed back over. Except the signature wasn't my father's. Elijah's jaw set. And a witness, she added quietly. A deputy out of Dodge. That detail hit with weight. Elijah pulled the horse back again, turning it over in his mind. So you ran, he said. I was carrying them to Fort Dodge, she said. To a marshal passing through. Someone who might actually do something with the truth. Behind them, the riders were shapes now. Small ones. Still closing. Elijah looked ahead at the wide, indifferent land. Then he glanced down briefly to where Clara kept her hand pressed against her side. He had seen enough to understand. Men don't ride that hard unless something's worth riding hard for, and they don't stop once they've committed. There's more in those papers than a land deed, he said quietly. Clara didn't answer. She didn't need to. Elijah adjusted the reins, almost speaking to himself. If Crow's connected to a deputy, he didn't finish it. He didn't have to. Because that meant this had grown beyond a property dispute. It was bigger. It was dirtier. And it had roots, a new sound cut across the prairie, not from behind. From ahead. Elijah lifted his chin, eyes going sharp. Another rider, coming straight at them. They're not just running us down, Elijah said. They're boxing us in. And that rider was not slowing. Elijah didn't pull back. The rider ahead bore down, crossing the open country like a man who believed the land already belonged to him. Clara felt Elijah shift his weight behind her, subtle but deliberate. He angled the horse right, using a low grass ridge to break the line of sight. Stay with me, he said. Clara held still. The man ahead raised one arm. Not a greeting. A signal. That was sufficient. Elijah yanked the reins hard, turning off the open flat, pushing the horse down into a shallow cut in the terrain. Dust swallowed them whole. Hoofbeats pounded the ridge overhead, one rider, two more trailing close behind. They didn't catch the movement below. But men like these always circled back. Elijah kept them moving, low ground between them and the ridge, slower now, deliberate. A collapsed shack appeared ahead, old timber, half a roof still attached, abandoned long enough to forget what it had once been. That'll serve, Elijah muttered. He brought the horse around behind it and dismounted first, then helped Clara down. She bit hard against the pain as her foot met the earth, but she held her own weight. The leg wasn't broken. Just punished enough to make every step a decision. Elijah looked her over quickly. That was enough information. They'll track us to this spot, he said. So we won't be here when they expect us. Then what? Clara asked. He crouched, brushing 2 fingers across the disturbed dirt, reading it like a page. 3 from behind, 1 from the front. 4, maybe 5 if one had stayed wide. Too many to engage out in the open and walk away from it clean. He stood. We let them believe we kept running, he said. Then we deal with whoever's careless enough to come inside alone. Clara blinked. That wasn't panic talking. That was a strategy. Elijah moved with purpose. He led the horse out from behind the shack, swept the tracks with a broken length of timber, then looped wide and brought the animal back in from a different direction entirely. A shadow broke across the doorway. One of Crow's men. He entered carefully, gun angled low, eyes working the dark corners. Elijah was already positioned. He struck without announcement, a closed fist to the throat, a shoulder driven into the chest. The man folded before a sound could leave him. Clara flinched but did not freeze. She reached down, pulled the fallen man's revolver free, raised it with both hands. Her grip trembled. Her aim held. More boots outside, closer. Elijah dragged the unconscious man aside and reset himself. The second one entered faster, smarter. Gun already level, he fired. The shot punched through the wall, scattering splinters. Clara returned fire without deliberating, not aiming to kill, aiming to stop. The bullet kissed the door frame close enough to the man's face that it changed his thinking completely. Elijah closed the gap and drove into him, shoulder first, slamming him hard into the wall. It was finished in moments. Both men stood in the breathing quiet afterward. Elijah's chest rose and fell. Clara lowered the gun inch by inch. "You've been in situations like this before," she said. Elijah lifted one shoulder. "Long time back," he said. Then he looked at her, genuinely the way a person does when they stop accounting for someone and start seeing them. "You handled yourself," he said. Outside, the wind shifted. The remaining riders were regrouping, and the next approach wouldn't come one man at a time. Elijah looked toward the land ahead of them. "If Crow is moving on this today," he said quietly, "we're running short on time." He paused. "And we're finished running. From here on, we ride toward it." They pushed toward the Arkansas River, the land stretching flat and enormous in every direction. Heat, distance, nothing else visible for miles. Elijah didn't charge blind. He slowed where the land allowed him to observe. He had sent word at first light, not knowing whether it would amount to anything. Supply wagons. A low shed near the crossing. Several horses tied at the water's edge. And men, more of them than he had hoped for. Clara took it in beside him. "That's where they are," she said. Elijah gave a single nod. He had anticipated this. Men like Crow preferred remote accounting. Places where the questions never started. He guided the horse behind a stand of dry brush and stopped. "Get low," he said. Clara dropped carefully, her legs stiff but functional. She moved up beside him, watching the scene below. Silas Crow stood near the shed, hat pulled low, speaking to someone holding a stack of papers. Off to one side, another man stood wearing a deputy's badge on his vest. Clara's breath stopped in her throat. "That's him," she whispered. Elijah kept his focus on Crow. Crow took the papers from the other man's grip and flipped through them with the leisure of someone who believed everything was already resolved. Then he laughed. Even at distance it carried, the sound of a man who had never once considered losing. "He thinks it's finished," Elijah said under his breath. "He thinks I'm already gone," Clara said. Elijah looked at her then. "Good," he said. "Give that another minute." He stepped out first. Not rushing. Not hiding. Just a man walking forward across open ground toward other men's business. Crow's people noticed him. Hands shifted but didn't draw. Not yet. He kept walking. "Afternoon," Elijah said. Even now his voice carried nothing extra. Crow turned. His eyes narrowed, working through recognition slowly. That was fine. Elijah kept closing the distance, easy and deliberate. Close enough now to read the papers in Crow's hand. Close enough to watch the deputy redistribute his weight nervously. Then Crow's gaze slid past Elijah, toward the brush, toward where Clara had been. Something locked into place behind his eyes. He knew. "Where is she?" Crow said, sharp now. No more leisure in it. Elijah didn't answer. The silence said enough. Everything happened at once. A weapon came up. A voice split the air. Clara saw the papers, the documents her father had died protecting, and she moved before thought could interrupt her. She stepped out from cover. Too soon. Crow seized her in a single motion, pulling her in front of him, forearm pinned across her shoulders. "Put it down," he said flatly. Elijah went still. Not from fear, from calculation. Crow pressed her against himself like a wall between him and consequence. "Should have left you face down in the dirt," he said to her, then looked at Elijah. "Would have saved you the inconvenience." Clara fought against his hold, but her damaged leg betrayed her just enough. The papers were still in his grip. Still within reach if the moment broke right. Elijah's eyes moved, papers, deputy, Crow, back to the beginning. Everything funneled down to a single instant, a single choice, a single error someone was about to make. He shifted his weight fractionally. Crow clocked it and smiled. The smile of a man who believed he was standing on solid ground. And that was the moment Elijah understood something. Crow was not afraid of law enforcement. He was expecting it. He had already made arrangements. The arrangement arrived. But it wasn't what Crow had paid for. They came in hard from the east, riders leaning forward, pushing horses that had been running since before the sun reached its peak. Hoofbeats cut across the dry ground like something the heat had been holding back all day. Crow turned, just for a breath. One fraction of a second. That was the door. Elijah moved through it. Not with speed that youth loans a man, but with the kind of certainty that only accumulates over years. He stepped in, got his arm around Clara, and pulled her down and clear as a shot cracked through the space she'd been occupying. Then the whole scene collapsed into noise. Men shouting. Guns leveled in every direction. dust boiling up from the ground. The deputy broke and ran. He made it perhaps 20 yards before 2 riders from Fort Dodge swept him off his feet and drove him into the earth. Crow swung around, searching for a way to reassert control. It was already beyond him. Elijah pressed in, one hand on Crow's arm, walking him back hard against the shed wall. No wasted motion. No dramatic swings, just force applied with precision until there was nowhere left to go. The papers tore loose from Crow's hand and landed in the dirt. Clara saw them. She didn't pause. She drove through the chaos, pain, noise, and all, dropped to one knee and gathered them against her chest with both hands. That was it. That was what every mile of this had come down to. Not revenge. Not anger. Evidence. The quiet, stubborn, enduring kind that doesn't make speeches but cannot be permanently buried. Crow was contained. The law held him. The guns went to rest one by one. Silence reclaimed the riverbank. And Crow was not negotiating his way out of this one. Elijah stepped back from him, breathing measured, watching the last of it settle into place. Clara stood upright, documents pressed against her chest, something in her spine that hadn't been there when this morning started. Blood-stained clothes, a leg that would take weeks to trust again, and an expression that had nothing in it of a woman who had been rescued. She looked like someone who had finally been believed. A few days on, the land remained where it had always been. The water still moved through it, and for the first time and longer than it should have taken, it was held by the hands it was always meant to belong to. Elijah didn't linger, at least not immediately. Men shape the way he was tend to lose their footing when the fight ends and the quiet begins. But sometimes life sets something down in your path that doesn't feel like an obligation. It feels like a reason. He didn't ride far. A few mornings later, Clara looked up from the edge of the property and saw him coming back through the heat, slow, unhurried, not the posture of a man passing through. This time he wasn't. Let me tell you something, friend. I've come across men like Crow throughout the years. They believe the badge or the money or the gun puts them beyond reach. This story leaves us with something worth sitting with. When the moment arrives, when it actually costs you something to do the right thing, do you step away or do you plant your feet? Because out in country like this, it isn't force that reveals a person's character. It's the choices made when no one is keeping score. A man's word and the backbone behind it. That's what remains when the dust finally settles. This story was gathered and shaped with care. A few details refined to carry the lesson cleanly and make the telling worth your time. The images you see were built with AI to help you feel the world of it a little more fully. If something in it stayed with you, a moment, a line, a question, drop it in the comments. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me what time it is where you are. And tell me this, would you have made the same choice Elijah made? If you believe stories like this still have something to offer, go ahead and like the video and subscribe to the channel. There are more roads ahead, and I'll be right here when you're ready to walk them.